Recently in Alberta, the RCMP announced that they would not be charging a homeowner who arrived home, found an intruder in his house, and was then attacked by that individual and shot that person in self-defense. Today on Don't Talk TV, I want to take a look at that case and revisit Section 34 of the Criminal Code. Hello, my name is Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a criminal defense lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. Self-defense law in Canada is something that I'm particularly interested in, and I think it's something that Canadians really need to educate themselves on because it's a bit of a murky area of law. The introduction of Section 34 by the Harper government certainly helped things and made the law a little bit more accessible and easy to understand, but nevertheless there are a number of factors that need to be kept in mind in applying that section, so I'm revisiting it again today in light of a recent case that I think gives us a very good example of how the law can potentially be applied. Fortunately, in a case where the RCMP did the right thing and decided not to charge a homeowner in what was a very clear case in my view. So let's start with the CTV news article, which is what caught my eye in the first place to do this episode. It's entitled, "No Charges Against Alberta Man Who Fatally Shot Home Intruder." So the article states at the outset here, no charges will be laid against an Alberta man who shot and killed an intruder after being beaten with a baseball bat, RCMP announced Friday. So if we just go down here, they've got a brief synopsis of the case according to the police. Quote, witnesses reported that the homeowner had arrived home and found the deceased sleeping in the residence. A confrontation then occurred in which the deceased struck the homeowner numerous times with a baseball bat, police said in a release. During the attack, the homeowner was able to retrieve a firearm and shot the deceased one time, end quote. Now, unfortunately, the intruder died as a result of that single gunshot wound, but fortunately, the homeowner and his wife and his daughter were all safe. The homeowner had some serious injuries. The article also mentioned that he's still in hospital recovering. I mean, he was struck by a baseball bat a number of times. Now, as I said in the introduction, this case is the clearest of cases, that this is legitimate self-defense. A man goes into his home, that's the place of refuge for anyone, the place where normally wouldn't be able to retreat from, and there's a person who may have been somewhat sympathetic. I mean, he's sleeping there. It's not someone who is ransacking the place. But instead of getting up and leaving when the homeowner comes or feeling some scintilla of compunction for having broken into someone's house, even if it's just to find a dry place to sleep, the guy attacks him with a baseball bat, causing serious injuries. And you can imagine this homeowner getting hit by a bat, trying to fend these attacks off, somehow getting to his gun safe, getting a firearm out and loading it. Let's apply Section 34 of the Criminal Code to this and just look at some of the considerations that likely went into the RCMP's thinking in deciding not to lay this charge. So I've got Section 34 of the Criminal Code opened here, and again, we've been through this before, but just as a recap, it says that a person is not guilty of an offense if A, they believe on reasonable grounds that force is being used against them. Well, it couldn't be more reasonable to believe that force is being used when an individual is actively being struck with a baseball bat. B, the act that constitutes the offense, in this case it's assault with a weapon or discharge a firearm with intent, is committed for the purpose of defending or protecting themselves. And again, as we've discussed before, that's purely subjective. And this homeowner, who's not being charged, clearly said that he only did this for self-defense, and he feels terrible that someone died as a result of it. And then C, the act committed is reasonable in the circumstances. So, as usual, it was likely subsection C, which is what had the RCMP really looking into this and considering charging this person even in the first place when, at first blush, it seems like the clearest of cases of self-defense, or almost clearest of cases. The only thing that I could think of that might be clearer would have been if the homeowner and his wife and daughter were already home and then this man invaded the home while they were there. But as you'll remember from previous videos, there's a number of factors laid out in subsection 2 that assist in determining whether the act committed is reasonable in the circumstances. So we've got things like the nature or force of the threat. So as we've described, the nature of the threat of the force here was a baseball bat, which could have potentially killed the homeowner quite easily. The extent to which the force was imminent, well, it was happening. It wasn't imminent, it was happening. Whether there were other means available to respond. Now, this is one where the police were probably thinking they wanted to charge him, because in 2021 and in recent years, the response has generally been, well, people should go cower in fear somewhere and wait for the police to show up and let the person kill them rather than defend themselves. But I think this case demonstrates why cowering in fear in a corner isn't a viable alternative, because this man would have been beaten to death. And who knows what this person would have done next. I mean, if they're already so irrational that beating a man with a baseball bat is the response to being caught out from invading his home and making your own home there, who knows if he would have continued to the motorhome where the wife and daughter were and attacked them as well. So, obviously, by not laying the charge, the RCMP ultimately decided that there wasn't a viable alternative. Although I'm kind of surprised they didn't say that, well, he should have run back outside, gotten in his vehicle, and ran away. C, the person's role in the incident. Well, his role in the incident was simply arriving home. There's no instigation whatsoever here. D, whether any party to the incident used or threatened to use a weapon. Well, as we've described, the invader was using a baseball bat. Now, size, age, gender, physical capabilities of the parties, we don't know what those were in this case, other than that both parties were men. The nature, duration, and history of any relationship. In this case, this is another neutral factor because the deceased was completely unknown to the homeowner, so there was no history. Then G, the nature and proportionality of the person's response to the use or threat of force. Now, again, this is one where things may have been a bit more in the gray area, at least from the RCMP's perspective, and why they were taking a hard look at this man. Is he's attacked with a bat and he responds with a gun. But again, in the context of these particular circumstances, it seems wholly appropriate, and apparently the RCMP ultimately agreed, to defend yourself with deadly force when deadly force is being used against you. And I think that's the comparison here. Deadly force versus whether it's a knife on one end and a gun on the other end, or in this case, a bat on one end and a gun on the other end. As I've referenced in previous episodes, the law doesn't require a finely tuned analysis of these things on the part of the homeowner. And finally, H, whether the act committed was in response to a use of force that was lawful. Again, clearly not the case here. So this is what I'd call a win for the good guys. The homeowner was the good guy here. He's going to deal with guilt over this, but he did the right thing. And the RCMP did the right thing by dropping the charge, so good on them. And it's nice once in a while to be able to review something good on this channel. As always, this video is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, call a lawyer. You can either call myself or another lawyer. My 1-855 number and website are listed below. And if you have any show topics you'd like to see me cover, please give me a suggestion in the comments section below or by sending an email, and I'm listing Don't Talk TV's email address below. And if you found this video at all interesting, helpful, or informative, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing, and following me on social media.